Hi there, I'm Ken Lammers. This is Commonplace Catholic. Peace be with all y'all. This week we're going to talk about what YouTube channels I subscribe to that are Christian based. So, let's get to it.
Lord Jesus Christ.
युगान युग तेरा ही है.
Ilekroć bowiem sprawujemy pamiątkę ofiary Chrystusa,
Kweli ni vema na haki tukushukuru daima na popote, Bwana Baba mwema.
主の御体と御血になりますように。
Okay, so I'm looking around for a topic for this week. There didn't seem to be any kind of theological discussions going on at the moment. The big news, of course, is still Pope Francis having died, his burial. I will tell you that I watched, way into the Saturday to Sunday. I watched the, procession and everything as they were doing all the things around St. Peter's Square. Those poor guys that were carrying the Pope, a couple of them looked like they were about to fall out because they weren't exactly walking at a good pace. They were doing a real slow march around the square, right? And then I woke up when they started talking at 3:30 when they were getting things ready to go, really, and but I couldn't stay awake. I just couldn't do it. Flaw in my being. Maybe I'm just too old anymore. But so, and we're just waiting for the conclave to meet and the next choice to be made. So that's where we're at. That's where things stand. There's not really any good videos out there. People trying to predict who would be the next pope, and you get that every time. And I will say that it is a little bit disappointing to see the attacks on Pope Francis and the church. Generally, not from the Protestants. Generally, from our own camp, people who believe that he was somewhere left of linen and are very concerned that we're going to keep on this path and that we're going to join the Germans in almost going into schism. I hope not, and I would say probably not, but I don't think they're going to get the Pope they want either out of Africa, and we'll see how things turned out. But that's for the future. Today we're going to go over YouTube videos that I watch or YouTube channels I subscribe to that are Christian. So I went through my feed to figure out which ones I did subscribe to. And, after getting past the political ones and the ones about science and philosophy and law, I came up with 18 Christian uh, vlogs, for lack of a better term, video blogs, and or video channels on YouTube. Most of them are Catholic, but there are several that are Protestant. And then I mixed them all up, had a computer randomly select which of the 18 would go first, all the way down to 18. And so let's get to it. Okay, so what we've got here, the one on the top right here, that is Trent Horn, or as his video channel is known, the Council of Trent. That's COUNSEL of Trent. He's from Catholic Answers. He is about polemics and arguing with Protestants and figuring out, what the various theologies of the church are and that sort of thing, defending the church. He is probably, of all the ones I see out there, including the other Catholic Answers guys, the one who just kind of strikes home most with me because he doesn't yell and scream, or at least not that I've seen, and he doesn't come across as overly condescending or snarky either. I mean, he's actually, you know, inveighing in a dialogue with people, and it is not a "you're wrong" because Calvin is wrong and you're all going to hell. It's not that. I mean, he actually does a good, serious discussion. Now, mind you, at times these things get a little bit tense, but he is probably the best I've seen out there as far as how to put it, like vibes. I'm on more on the same wavelength with this guy. Below him is the Babylon Bee. Yes, I know it's a parody site, that it's a humor site. I also know that it's run by Christians, which is why it was banned from like X or Twitter back in the day, whatever you want to call it. And it's been around, and quite a bit of their humor is about Christian world, Christian theology, and they will poke at people who are on their side too. If you're doing something they think is sanctimonious, condescending, stupid, you'll get a poke, right? But they are generally Christian in nature. I really, really recommend to you the Californians Moving to Texas series. It is hilarious. Next is that black Catholic chick. I did not make that name up. Before everybody yells at me, that's what she calls her channel, right? She is more of about faith. She tells you a little bit about how things go in the church and this and that, but she's more about faith. She's not arguing theology. I mean, a little bit of that may occur, but she's mainly trying to bring people into the faith, evangelizing through telling you about her experiences in the faith and how she's grown and done this and that in church. And it is kind of inspiring. I do recommend you to go see it. And but I will admit, and I would say this for a lot of these, for almost all of these. I never watch everything from all of these, but I won't say I watch every one of hers, but I do. When I see her, when she pops up in my feed, I will take a look and see what she's talking about today. Then we get Father Casey. That's Breaking the Habit, and Father Casey is a Franciscan. I think when he started doing the channel, he was just a monk, but then he became a priest. Father Casey is a very faithful man, living the faith as Franciscans do. I'm not sure what particular flavor of Franciscan he is. There's about 9 million of them out there, but he very much believes. He will defend the faith. At times, it feels like he's papering over things. When there's something that goes wrong, you will kind of feel like Father Casey is trying to defend things where, he's been put out on that limb and he's just trying to make the best he can out of it. And sometimes I know I said when I talked about Vatican II that he really kind of lacked perspective on what happened after Vatican II, all in the name of, in the spirit of Vatican II, where the church really went wackadoodle for a bit. But generally, he's a really good guy. He's fun to listen to. And, when he's up and he's doing some humorous stuff, he can be even more fun. Okay, so now we go to Father Mike Schmitz. This is Ascension Publishing, I think it is. He is not the only one on there. Let me make sure what that Ascension Presents. And I think they do an Ascension Sundays too. He's not the only one on there, but I think he is the one that's the most, for lack of a better term, famous on there. As I recall, he made his bones on the internet, on YouTube, by going through and reading the entire Bible one time through. So, bravo to him. And it is kind of a gentle, faithful broadcast, that sort of thing. He's not out there arguing serious theological points all the time. It's more of a shepherding the herd type of thing. Nice guy. Generally, I will pick up on one about every 8 or 10 that he does and kind of watch it through. But he is doing God's work. Below that is Jimmy Akin. Jimmy Akin is Catholic Answers. He is, I think, probably their top arguer, and he is very well learned. He is very well studied. He can argue just about any point given a little bit of time, and a lot of times, he doesn't really need to be, with something that he's fairly familiar with. Doesn't need to go back and redo it. But he's the kind of guy who will start quoting, and we look at this book says this, and this book says that. And I'm not talking about books of the Bible. He's talking about theological books that this or that person has written. He's really, really good at that sort of thing. Now, on the other side of this, he's a little bit quirky, right? And you can see how he's dressed there. Now, if you look back on some of his older stuff, he used to wear things that were a little bit more. He used to keep his beard more trimmed and his hair better trimmed, and wore suits and sort of thing, regular suits and that sort of thing. And he's leaned into in more recent years the long scraggly beard, long hair, the cowboy stuff, the cowboy accent, and beyond that, he also does part of his video casts are his was it Weird World, Strange World, or something like that, where he talks about things like aliens and vampires and whatever other supernatural things. So, yeah, like I say, he's a little bit quirky, but he is also probably the smartest of all the arguers that I see online. Okay, then we get to reason and theology, and this gentleman here, he generally talks about what's going on in the church, and he gives a kind of a theological perspective on it. I'm trying to remember, I think this is the gentleman that went from Protestant to Orthodox to Catholic, and has, God willing, found his home and stays. He, I will give you a warning, and I will look at his stuff probably a little bit more than most on here, because he talks about interesting topics and gives an opinion, a position, right? Not just saying, yes, I will do what the church tells me to do, which we all will anyway if we're Catholics, but he actually talks about things, about beliefs and what's not. Interesting guy, good guy. We'll give you a little bit of warning every time I look at his page or his YouTube videos. The YouTube algorithm will decide that I have become a right-wing, super duper sedevacantist, old Catholic Church guy, Orthodox, whatever. I just start getting some really over here stuff, right? Well, I guess for y'all it'd be over here stuff, right? And that doesn't mean I stop watching him, but just be kind of aware. The algorithm sometimes does weird things. Last week in the church by Crux. This is probably the best news thing I found about what's going on in Vatican City and in the top of the church and all that. Problem is, I think it may be dead now. I have not seen anything from this channel in 3 or 4 months. And the idea, I think, back in the day was they would do one broadcast a week. Last week in the church, right? So I'm worried that this one's gone, which is sad because it was a really good source of information. Aha! Well, told you there are some Protestants in here. The 10-minute Bible hour. This is an interesting one. I'm not sure what flavor of Protestant this gentleman is, but he generally is, pretty even tempered. He talks through what he believes. He's willing to talk with people about things that are outside of his belief. He has more than once talked to this or that Catholic about what's going on in the Catholic Church. And he's obviously a man of faith and worth listening to. I think I probably listen to every 4 or 5, 6 things he puts up, right? I like him personality-wise, too, and that's part of it. Okay, then we get Father, David Michael Moses. This gentleman, this father, it's pretty light what you see on his channel a lot of times. It's not really like seriously deep theological stuff. This is a guy who is shaping the herd, trying to move the herd along, right? He's shepherding. And as far as I can tell, he's doing a good job. He's a pleasant guy, but I can't say that I go looking for his videos all the time. Sorry, Father. Then we get Rustlin here. Rustlin KD's the name of the page. I'm not sure what denomination this gentleman is, but you see all sorts of Protestants and Catholics talking to him in interview format. Now, my understanding, and this is from what I've seen him talk about, is that he started this channel as a way to try to teach people who were doing Christian music how they could do the music, live their faith, and make enough money to, support themselves, their wife, and everything, right? And it developed into, he gets some really interesting people on there, and he gets some really interesting interviews, and he doesn't seem to shape, well, all interviewers shape the interview, but he is not like, you're wrong because of this. It's like, well, tell me about this, right? And he will get different points of view from all sorts of different people, Catholic, Protestant, etc. And he's interesting to watch. Occasionally he shills some like stuff he's doing, but that's just part of where he's at. Like I said, he initially made this site as a way to show people this is how you can make money, how you can survive, not necessarily get uber rich, but survive while living your faith doing Christian artistry. I really enjoy watching him a lot of times. Then we get Bishop Barron, and that is the Word of Fire ministry he's doing. Bishop Barron now has become, dare I say, mainstream, right? He is turned into a bishop, and when he started rising, I mean, I was watching him when he was Father Barron. God, I'm old, but he is incredibly well educated on these things. He's read all sorts of books that I haven't even seen the cover of, right? And he understands this theology, that theology, and far better than I do. And back in the day when he was kind of starting out and had a little bit more sharp elbows, right? He was, never mean or evil, but he would kind of, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, here's why, and he would give you a really good in-depth reason, right? I think he's been on Joe Rogan and that sort of thing, but he's never going to be that guy who's, causing all sorts of interest. He's going to be that guy that calmly explains to you why it is this way and why we all need to accept that it's this way and work with what we've got in the world so we can get God's grace through the church and go on to, a better time after life, right? He's really good at that sort of thing. He concentrates now, I think, mostly on his Word on Fire ministry, and I kind of feel like we've lost something with it. But he does every week. There is a homily. I would suggest it to you because generally they're really well thought out and really thought provoking. Matt Fradd, top right here, that is I believe Australian who used to call it Pints with Aquinas. You don't see it called that anymore. It's his YouTube channel is Matt Fradd. He does interviews, does the thing where we're going to prove we're manly by sitting around smoking cigars. Blah. Okay. But he does get interesting people on to interview. Some of them are kind of far rightish. Some of them are a little bit left. And some of them are just kind of laity who are trying to make it through on their own. So he gets really interesting people in there to talk and tell you some really interesting things. And so, I do recommend his show to you. Below that is Voice of Reason. This gentleman is probably best known, maybe mostly successful, because of his voice, which is very unique, right? He is a somewhat of a theological arguer, somewhat of a come to the church faith guy. He is interesting to watch, and he kind of made the rounds there for a while, going on different shows. But now he's primarily doing his, from what I can tell. I think he started out on TikTok and then moved over to YouTube maybe for longer term stuff. So now we get to EWTN. This is the Catholic Global Network, right? You've seen this on cable, and they've moved on to YouTube in a big way. You know, they're there. I can't tell you the last time I've actually looked at anything from EWTN. My impression of EWTN usually is we're going to talk like this, and we're going to be very reverent, and we're going to do our very best to put you to sleep in the middle of the afternoon by not raising our voices and not having any really serious theological discussions. You know, a lot of people professing their faith in that very, very, you know, reverent tone. Uh, so I've, you know, EWTN has done amazing things, but I can't say that I'm the biggest fan. And then we get Your Calvinist Podcast by Keith Foskey. Now this, I primarily tripped over this the same way most everybody else has tripped over Keith Foskey. He does humorous skits where he sets up a situation and runs different denominations through it. And you know, if it's anything like when he has Catholics up there, I don't know how far he is off on the other denominations, but I don't think he has the greatest understanding of Catholicism. He is, as best I can tell, and he does a live stream, I think every Friday night, which I will flip into and watch for 10 or 15 minutes and go off and watch Nerdrotic or something for a while. So he, which that's about the attention span you're going to get from me on YouTube, right? He's not deep theological arguing, right? But he will lay out a pretty solid understanding of where his belief is. I think he's a Reformed Baptist, which clearly he talks about being Calvinist. So I think what Reformed Baptist, at least for his view of it, is probably I'm a Presbyterian, but I'm not Scottish, right? Although I could be wrong, I don't know. He could be Scottish, and he's very into Calvinism and defending the undefendable. But he is fun, jocular, interesting to listen to, avuncular, all those nice words. And I do recommend listening to him a little bit and kind of seeing where he's at. And if you see him doing a humorous skit, I seriously recommend going and watching that. Then we get to, we're going to end up with two Protestants. The first one here is Disciple Dojo. And this guy's a little bit different in that, you can see there, like, if you look at the background of that picture there, he's got a bunch of, like, Marvel and DC characters up and comics and all sorts of things like that. I think this guy has made his bones primarily by reviewing Bibles. And that's how I found him, reviewing different Bibles here and there, Catholic Bibles, Protestant Bibles, all sorts of Bibles. And he does a good job at it. I mean, if you've watched any videos of people reviewing Bibles, I kid you not, I've seen more than one Bible where it's like, oh, that's a good cover. Ah, look, the paper's pretty thick. It holds together pretty well. That's a good Bible. I've seen more than one review that's pretty much that, right? That's not reviewing a Bible. He will go through and he'll review the Bible, right? And he will point out things he disagrees with, agrees with, etc. It is really worthwhile watching him. And then finally, we get to Ready to Harvest. This is, I didn't realize until I put this up here that this is not actually from his vlog, his video blog. This is somebody else talking about how he was going to be on their podcast. This guy is really amazing. He goes through and all this stuff's about, this is what this denomination's about, this is what that denomination's about. Here's a comparison of these 27 different denominations. Oh, wait, we've got these people here who claim to be independent or non-denominational. Let's see where they fit. And he will do all that, and he's really good at it. I mean, he's maybe the best I've seen at it. And I mean, yeah, I think he's better than Reform Zoomer. Reform Zoomer used to do this, but not so much anymore. I haven't seen Reform Zoomer in a while, but he does this and he does it really well. It's kind of like, I don't know what faith he belongs to, right? I just know he's out there doing a lot of research, finding what the beliefs of the various faiths are, and laying them out in a way that's pretty easy to understand and follow. I strongly recommend him. So that's it. I have at times had more uh, things I follow, like Christian video blogs or YouTube channels. I've followed more of them in the past, but I've also done purges. I periodically go through and try to purge my YouTube thing, because there will be all sorts of things on there that I haven't watched anything on it for the last year, and just, oh well, let's get rid of that, right? Um, there's several wonderful Christian channels out there that you would probably enjoy, where they just keep it so vanilla, right? They fill 3 hours of just talking like this and keeping everything at ha 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 ha. Well, isn't that wonderful? That sort of thing. I also run across several. I don't really keep up with the super right wing Catholic sedevacantists / whatever other versions are out there, or the super left wing ones either, to be honest with you. And I've run into pockets of Protestantism that I just don't know exactly how to characterize. Like what we used to call low church, but I think might even be called more primitive church Protestantism. And you think, okay, this is just some guy on his, on his stump in his backyard. No, they know each other. They've got a whole community and all that, right? But they're talking about issues that I'm not particularly interested in. Sorry, guys. I mean, I only have so much space up here, and so I don't really subscribe to them. Uh, so you've seen what I subscribe to. Some of these, like I could probably drop EWTN, but I just can't make myself do it, right? And there are other people out there who are like Ortland, who is a Protestant theologian, who's somebody worth watching when you run across him. And not saying he's right on things, but he's well thought out most of the time when he makes a statement, and others too. And then, of course, there's others that aren't thought at all, and I think you can run across that in any denomination. But go out, look, find some of these channels and watch them and see which ones you think are really good and which ones you just, don't get you any closer to God. Just because one doesn't get you closer to God doesn't mean it doesn't get somebody else closer to God, but it may not fit for you. Having said all that, I think we're back to the normal stuff we do at the end. Google, YouTube, whatever, algorithm, blah, blah, blah. Hit like. Just hit like. If you really see what you're like subscribing here, hit subscribe. If you like, you really, really like it, hit subscribe and hit the bell so that you get told whenever I'm putting something out. And I'm going to say again what I always say: there is no imprimatur here from the church. Nobody from the lowest hermit to the, I would say the Pope here, but from lowest hermit to the highest archbishop / cardinal / whatever has put any approval into this. And again, the Inquisition hadn't shown up my door either, but that may be just a matter of time. Anyway, folks, I hope this stimulated you to think about some things and inspired you to go watch some of these people. And until next time, go in peace, and I will try to come up with something we can talk about next week. Have a good week.